Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the pod. I'm Dave. He's Peter. And as we get ready to officially launch the annual fund on Monday, November 3rd, we thought that it'd be helpful to remind our listeners how the fund supports our people. Today, then, we're going to spotlight 4 of our faculty members who are benefiting directly from the annual fund and whose students are reaping those benefits. Right, Peter?
That's absolutely right, Dave. Thanks for being the voice of the podcast. So I've got 5 of my favorite people at St. Stephen's, and I'm going to go left to right, even though you're listening to this. So we have Mrs. Tanya Cronetti, who's our 6th grade English teacher extraordinaire. We have Mrs. Bianca Lawrence, who's our director of the annual fund. Mr. Tyler Cotton, who's our computer science and engineering expert in the upper school. Ms. Katie Turman, who is our 3rd grade teacher, and then Ms. Fraser Campbell, who is in our upper school arts. And they all bring not only extraordinary talents, but a really particular benefit from our annual fund. So that's what we'll explore today, is how have they, and by extension their students, benefited from the generosity of our families and benefactors. So let's start with Bianca, since this is your territory. Before we get into the actual specific amazing things that the people around you are doing, could you just tell us one more time, what exactly is the annual fund and how does it work?
Absolutely. So I'm super excited to be St. Stephen's first director of the annual fund. And with that amazing position, though we have always had an annual fund and it used to be known as the States Fund, I get to have this position all year long and get to dedicate myself to growing it. In the past, the fund really had a short duration. And so, since my starting last year, we truly get to have an annual fund. And this year, the fund kicks off on November 3rd and will run until the end of the fiscal year in June 30th. So we really have almost an entire school year to be able to get everybody on board. And that's really what we want to do is, this is kind of the main focus of fundraising here at St. Stephen's. We have a lot of other great opportunities to raise funds, but the annual fund really is the lifeblood of philanthropy on campus. And having families really commit to giving and participating and supporting the annual fund is so important, as we'll hear, from some of the recipients later what we do. And that's, I think, what we want parents to know is that they really are making an impact in so many ways by giving to the annual fund, because it is all about the teachers and it's all about the students that then benefit from these great teachers. And it's really not about, I'm not asking because I like to, make people uncomfortable or make people, do something that they don't want to do. I really ask every day because of our children. And that's super important to me. Um, One of the most important aspects, I think, of the annual fund starting last year was the addition of the holiday bonus program. I mean, how could anything be better to give to our teachers during the holidays to help them celebrate with their families from our families here on campus? And I think our families are really behind that, and that's super important.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up because we'll come back to that at the end. And that holiday bonus is not only just obviously special during the holidays, but it is a way to say thank you to the extraordinary people who make such a difference in children's lives. Let's stay with you just for a second, though, Bianca. My daughter went to independent school. She's in college now. I've written many a check, tuition check, and so many of our families are in a similar boat. These are not inexpensive schools, and so many of our families and grandparents and friends also give of their time as volunteers. So how do you answer someone who says, with all due respect, I already give so much to the school. I already sacrificed so much. Why are you asking for an annual fund gift?
Absolutely. And as a parent of, 2 current students and an alum, I'm very aware of, what the cost of tuition is. And I know that it is absolutely worth every penny. But I know that in, today's economy and across the board, it could be, difficult to justify that. And as I mentioned earlier, we're not doing it for anything but to give their children, our children, all of the children, every opportunity they have while they're at St. Stephen's. We have such a short time with them, and we really want to make this place the really take advantage of having the best teachers, the best equipment, the best curriculum support, everything we can so that every child at St. Stephen's comes out prepared for their college life and for every day that they're here, loving to learn, loving their friends, making those connections that they'll need later on. So I definitely understand that's hard, and I can say that of course we would love every giving level to be covered, but participation is really important. And if parents just want to be sure that they can donate, that is really important, and we want to have 100% participation, so really any bit counts.
Yeah, that's really well said. And we have four people here who make a difference in our students' lives every day, and for whom the annual fund made a difference in their life. And one of the areas that the annual fund directly supports is professional development. And then within that fund, because sometimes people don't know, well, what does that really mean? One of the areas that we use those resources is to support some of our teachers going back to graduate school. And we have Mrs. Cornetti and Ms. Turman who are taking advantage of that in a brand new course at USF on independent school leadership. So maybe Tanya, we'll start with you. Tell us about this program. What are you learning, and how's it impacting your students?
It's a great program to be a part of. We are just starting out. This is our first semester. There are two courses that we take per semester. One is fully asynchronous online, and the other is kind of a hybrid between online weekly meetings and a few in person sessions as well. Um, Right now, the topics we're covering are AI in education and educational leadership. So both are so relevant to what I teach every single day. Current research, it's been a little while since I got my undergraduate degree, so things have progressed in education. So it's great for me personally to be able to be up on the most current trends in research and practices for our students. And the second thing I would say that's really great about it is it puts me in the seat of being a student again, and experiencing what that feels like, and gives me greater empathy for my own students and what they're going through. So I really appreciate that about it as well.
Yeah, there's nothing like the nerves before a test or a big paper. Ms. Turman, what's your experience been like? And tell us a little bit more about how it's impacting your work with third graders.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really learning all about leadership, the ethics and values around it, curriculum and instruction. And as Tanya said, we're taking an introduction to AI in education class. This course has been incredibly timely with the rapid changes and advances AI is making currently and how it's impacting our students and education. So we're bringing those tools and resources and skills back into our classroom. I've tried some of the platforms I've been exposed to in the class with my students. We had a lot of fun making AI generated poems with their ideas and really taking it a step further with the students' input and the teachers' guidance as part of that behind AI, and really using it as a tool, not to drive our instruction. As well, we're doing a change professional development in our educational leadership course. I'm working on onboarding new faculty members and excited to bring ideas that I'm gathering through the program back to St. Stephen's.
Oh, I love that. And that kind of wraparound approach where you're thinking about your students, their needs, even as young learners, but also thinking about how you can support your colleagues. That's exciting. Continuing education is not cheap. Um, so I would love to just hear a little bit more about how they've enabled you to further your education beyond just writing the check or helping you. How did this help you get back into the classroom? Either one of you want to just reflect on that.
Well, I'll start with it kind of gave me the impetus to get back in the classroom. I have two daughters in college, so we're spending money on tuition, just not for me personally. And so this would not have been something I would have necessarily taken advantage of had St. Stephen's not been able to provide the funding for. So I'm really grateful for that. And it's a unique opportunity that I wouldn't have wanted to miss because it is with an independent school cohort. So we are in a group with fellow independent school educators. So the entire program is tailored to issues of independent schools. And I'm learning a lot from my fellow the students in the program
Yeah.
too.
So it's really opened that door for you. Katie, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts?
Well, I've been wanting to pursue my master's for a long time now. So when the school stepped up and said that we could use the professional development funds to make this possible for Tanya and I jumped at the opportunity. And in my statement to apply to the program, I stated that, my goal is to be a lifelong learner with my 5-year-old son being my ultimate driving force, that I want him to see me continue to grow and learn, and my students as well. I talked to him about how I'm taking a class too. And as Tanya said, we're really in the seats and have that view that our students have as well.
That empathy is really powerful, and it's very powerful to think about you modeling your education, not just for your students, but also for your own child. So thank you for that. So Fraser, let's turn to you. I had the great good fortune of watching a presentation you did about your father, Kyle Grant. I won't spoil the surprise. You can tell them what it was about, but those listeners who maybe don't even know what a Father Kyle Grant is, could you explain what that is and then share with them the amazing things you did on your trip and how they're showing up in the classroom?
So, a Father Kyle grant is a summer grant for professional study, and it's normally for bigger projects. So, a lot of teachers will use these grants to go abroad or do a course that takes several weeks. And so, what I proposed and what I ended up doing was a painting workshop in Italy where we learned how to do plein air painting, which, for those of you who don't know, plein air painting is a style of painting that means painting on location. And so you're painting landscapes or architecture, and instead of painting in a studio from a photo, you're actually in those landscapes looking at that architecture, painting from real life. And one of the interesting things about this style of painting is that the sun is moving. And so you have to work really quickly to be able to capture what is in front of you, because if you wait too long, then the sun has moved, the shadows have changed, the light has changed. And so one of the reasons I really wanted to take this course was because I see a lot of perfectionism in my art students. And I realized that if there were a way to get students out of this mindset and even learn how to get out of this mindset for myself, I thought it would be a really valuable tool to give kids. And with this style of painting, you really can't be a perfectionist. You have to move quickly. You have to be okay with mistakes and imperfection. And so going on this workshop in Italy, we went to Umbria, we went through Tuscany, and then we spent a week in Lake Como. And so I was there for 2 weeks total. And being able to go on this workshop and paint all of these different places and learn how to work through the challenges that I was experiencing as a painter, it really helped me learn how to deal with my own perfectionism. And also it helped me get this skill down to teach the kids, which I think will help them with their own perfectionism. And I've definitely seen the benefits in my classroom already, even though we haven't even started our painting unit. The other day, I did a demonstration for the kids, and I actually had the kids point out my mistakes in my drawing as a way of showing them that mistakes are normal and they happen in everyone's artwork and that it's nothing to be ashamed of. And it's actually good when you notice your mistakes because that means you're growing and you're being self-aware. And I've really appreciated the opportunity that the Father Kyle grant presented me, because otherwise I think I would have let my perfectionism maybe get the best of me, because I think in my nature I am a bit of a perfectionist. So I'm very, very grateful for the learning opportunity this presented.
Yeah, and that's one of the themes that comes through is your opportunities as learners, not only on a very, very concrete level, I learned something, I share it with my students, but it's that other part, that empathy, where you start to understand that, as we all know, to teach well, to be a good person is to be empathetic to others. One last question about your father, Kyle Grant. It's pretty easy to hear the excitement in your voice. Can you pick out one or two highlights of that opportunity? It's probably an unfair question, but maybe just whatever comes to mind.
I have kind of an unexpected highlight that may not sound like a highlight at first, but it actually was one of the best things I took away from the trip. So I had one day of the trip where I had some stuff going on that I was pretty stressed out about outside of the painting workshop. And it definitely showed up in my painting. I was so stressed. I had to stop painting and get a gelato. And then I stopped painting again and I got a cappuccino. I was just not doing well at all. I was like, hated my painting. And I had this kind of aha moment where I realized this might be what my students feel like. I'm an art teacher, art is my profession, and I'm getting frustrated with my painting. How might a beginner ninth grader feel when they're approaching an artwork and maybe they've never picked up a paintbrush or it's been years since they've really tried to draw anything realistically? And so when I had that experience, it really was a huge turning point for me in this class where I really was able to better empathize with my students and how they might feel coming into the classroom. And it also helped me confront some of my own perfectionism. And really, I had to work through that and realize it's okay if it's not perfect, and it's okay. You may have some bad drawings along the way that just aren't your favorite. And that's completely fine. That doesn't mean you're a bad artist. That's just part of it. And I think that learning moment was probably one of the biggest learning moments I had on the trip.
And I would just submit that as a relatively young teacher, your ability to speak to that has an especial power to the young people that you're speaking with. They see themselves in you, perhaps a little more than they might with some old gray-haired guy like me. Mr. Cotton, you have a new gig this year. Actually, you started it last year, but this is your first full year. Could you talk a little bit about the various STEM courses that you're teaching, and how you got interested in those areas yourself?
Yeah, certainly. So after teaching math at St. Stephen's for 7 years, I transitioned last year into computer science and the engineering department. So this year, I'm fortunate enough to teach 4 different classes. I had Introduction to Computer Science, Engineering, AP Computer Science Principles, and AP Computer Science A. And so in those classes, they really kind of build upon each other. So in our Introduction to Computer Science class, they learn the basics of programming through different languages like Python, where they get to build apps and games and web pages. It's really a fun introduction to the programming world. And AB Computer Science Principles, they get a chance to learn the basics of computers as well. So they're not just learning about programming, while there is still a component of programming simple apps in Java. And then lastly, after those 2 courses, there's Computer Science A, where the students really dive into the world of programming, and specifically in Java, where they get to create multiple difficult programs throughout the school year, where they end in a capstone program that they submit to the college board. Engineering has been really enjoyable to teach as well. It's a really hands-on class, and the kids really get excited about things that they're able to do. So for instance, we just finished building a class chess set, and we let all the students create their own chess pieces, and we voted as a class for them to each pick one individual piece that they wanted to print that we built together. So it's kind of a cool artifact that we have in the classroom now. And the other kids from other classes then find themselves playing our chessboard. So it's kind of exciting. As far as myself, I really fell in love with technology when I was in high school. I took as many classes with computers as I was allowed to, probably more than I probably even should have taken. And that eventually just transitioned into college. While my major wasn't in technology, I chose to do business administration. I knew that going into the workforce and the idea of building my own business, that I needed some science and technology background so that I could kind of further expand what I wanted to do. And I knew those would create important skills for me. So when at St. Stephen's, I found out there was an opening in this department, I was thrilled because I knew that I could bring those same passions to the classroom that I had.
Well, we were thrilled because if you hadn't volunteered, we were going to try to volunteer you to do it. So it was good meeting of the minds, because any of you who are listening whose children have had Mr. or Mrs. Cotton know what kind of special educators they are. Quick question for you, Mr. Cotton. You went to an AP program this summer to kind of learn the ins and outs of the class. What would you take away? What are 1 or 2 major takeaways, and not necessarily the technical aspects of the courses, but for you as a accomplished teacher, what'd you take away?
So going to the AV Summer Institute this summer, I was fortunate enough to go to Indianapolis for it. And I, to be honest, was very intimidated at first. I was going to a summer institute where I knew there were going to be 1,500 plus people at this summer institute. And I knew that I was probably one of the newer teachers to the subject. And so it was pretty intimidating walking in the first day, but that was really solved pretty quickly. A lot of the teachers that I was in the room with, my specific group had about 20 different teachers. Um, they really had a ton of knowledge that they were willing to share, and they kind of just treated me as one of their own already, even though I was brand new to it. And so it was really exciting to hear like some proven strategies from those teachers. Yes, the technical aspect, I already had that background in terms of the program that I did, but actually how to teach it to others was new to me. And so kind of getting those resources from them was great. Not only did they tell me like some strategies for the classroom, but they gave me online resources to use as well to make the programming less mundane and more exciting for the students. And on top of that, I was really fortunate that the leader or the instructor of my class was actually someone who has helped write the AP exam for the last 20 years. And so he not only had good insight into what the course should be anyways, but he had insight into how they thought when they were building the exam and the course itself. So that really gave me, a lot more confidence coming back, knowing that I was going to be able to better serve my students through both the teaching and the learning aspect.
Yeah, that's great. And again, there's another common theme, which is the power of being a constant lifelong learner. Somebody asked me at a reception the other day, what do I look for in teachers? And I always say, I look for people who view themselves as learners as much as knowers. And you have five with Bianca, great examples of that. Last question for you. Before we get there, I just want to remind again our readers that not only does the annual fund support the extraordinary things that you just heard about, but that holiday bonus is, and so from November 3rd all the way up through the winter holiday, we are blessed to have a significant matching pool so that every dollar that someone gives to the annual fund up to $30,000 is going to be matched. So this is your chance, listeners, to give back to the people that, again, give so much to your children. And by the way, as the head of school or our administrators, do not get those funds. Those are for the people that are making a difference with your children in those classrooms. So last question, it's a fill in the blank. I always like these. So here's the fill in the blank, and we can go in any order you want. 5 words or less, so let's say. Fill in this blank. For me, the annual fund means blank. Anybody want to start?
I'll start. I mean, I have the best job because I can say that the annual fund means fun dreams.
Fun dreams. Well done.
I would say for me, the annual fund means an opportunity to be a lifelong learner.
I would say more student and teacher opportunities.
I would say educational exploration. And I would say the ability for us to go above and beyond.
Well, thank you so much. And by the way, if you're wondering, we didn't practice that. This is all just really the thoughtfulness of the teachers who teach your children. So thank you so much, folks. We're thrilled not only to have you at St. Stephen's, but thrilled that you had the opportunity to do all the fabulous things that you did. Take care.